I see the clouds, they're rolling in. They hide the sun, but not my sin. The Judas kiss still on my lips. Can't walk away from where I've been. Oh, hear the calling. Hear the calling. Walking on the water, drop the sun in my feet. Gonna make the devil holler, hallelujah. I'm tired of watching shadows bleed, fighting for nothing but a need. The seventh fall is on my knees. Their sighs and secrets cover me. Oh, hear the calling. Hear the calling. Walking on the water, drop the sun in my feet. Gonna make the devil holler, hallelujah. Gonna roll across the waves, gonna let the birds sing. Listen to the devil singing,
Welcome. You're listening to Mystic Moon Cafe Radio.
You're listening to Mystic Moon Cafe. The views and opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the network, or our sponsors.
Good Wednesday evening, everyone. How is everyone out there in Radio Land tonight? Hi, June. You with me?
Hey. No, well, mentally, I don't know, but physically, and I'm right here. I'm right here with you.
All right.
What about Jake? Is he around?
How you doing?
Hey! Yay! So, how are you guys? How are both of you?
I have a bit of a mood today, but I think it'll be all right.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
As long as it'll
Why?
be all right. Not that you have a mood, though.
Yeah, what's
I
up with
don't
the mood?
I don't know. Sometimes they just attack me.
Oh.
I become Wendy the Witch, not Wendy Lady. So it just happens.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
That's all right. Some days you just gotta, feel it. Feel the
Yep.
feelings. Feel the feelings, man.
Put on the hat and let them know who you are, right?
Get your flying monkeys out and just go for it.
what was you had the image today on the Facebook? Sometimes you have to put the hat on and let them know who they're dealing with.
Exactly, yep.
That's a social media tie-in. You can go to facebook.com, Mystic Moon Cafe, and like it and follow and get all these fun memes today.
That's awesome. That's true.
You like that plug?
I like
That
that.
was good, yes.
Glad you liked it.
So, Jake, what about you?
Today was all about corporate banality as I make a PowerPoint presentation. You know, that very exciting stuff. So if you guys don't know, I work in data analytics and I have to make an analytics presentation. And
That
it's
sounds fun.
the topic is really interesting. However, not a fan of making PowerPoints.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
But
other than that-
I'm supposed to be making my PowerPoints, for my travel on the spooky side presentation.
Ooh, let me
And,
know. Let me know. I can help.
yeah.
We can do this.
I've got 3 slides done out of 36.
Do you really need 36?
Well, I don't know. I'm panicking. What? I thought it was only 36.
Well, how long's...
You only have 3 slides done out of 36.
When is this
Yeah.
due? What's your deadline?
Well, I keep, I keep trying to put topics in each slide, and all I'm getting, is like, oh, I don't know. What do I say about this place? Let me just hop
Okay.
to the next place.
Well,
So,
you know what? You know what? Oh, that's Wally in the background. That's my big German Shepherd pit bull. He's like alerting me to things. But since I have to do a lot of presentations, I'm more than happy to help because you're probably overthinking it. And there's all
Yes, I am.
sorts of shortcuts. We can put it into the notes section that you can read while projecting
And I
the
have
nice
like
photos.
every letter spinning.
Oh,
and I
no,
have,
no.
Like 67 pictures. And,
So I'll be-
fireworks and explosions.
I'll be over tonight.
Oh my god. Yes, this is going to be really something. Yeah.
This could be fun. I think I need you to record that, June.
When I start giving the presentation, everybody's going to go, holy crap! Watch. Oh, God. Well, I had one of those days too. I actually went to the pool this morning, and then after that, I rode the bus, which I don't do. So
Except you did.
yes, I did. So I'm gonna start doing this every single day. So we'll see. Well, not every day. I probably won't do it on Friday since I go to Spooked in Seattle on Friday. So
Sure.
so yeah. So that's my goal. 4 days a week.
Oh, well, I gotta say, I do like public transportation. The bus isn't my favorite, but I do like the Seattle light rail system. We're plugging. I can't believe we're plugging like public transportation. But I do like the light rail.
I get car sick, so I have to drive, or
Oh,
or puke. One of the two.
That would be good. That would not be good. Yeah.
June never knows when she comes to town how much self-control it takes and how many smiling to keep to offset the gag reflex I'm doing to not vomit in her car.
Yay. That's nice.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
what we could do is have you ride in the back, and then in that back pocket we can put, like, on airplanes, it's got the exit plan, a barf bag, and the menu.
Right.
Right. Couple pillows should be fine. Oh my gosh. But
Well, on to more pleasant topics.
yes. That's gonna be a little more pleasant. talk about. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please
sorry,
go
Wendy.
ahead.
No,
We
I
can
was
talk-
just gonna say, Jacob and I can talk a little bit about our investigation we had was it just this last weekend?
Yeah, it was Saturday night, and it was such an interesting location, a bordello.
Bordello Museum.
Yes.
It wasn't an active bordello.
Well, it could
We're
be fun
not
if it
in-
were an active.
No comment.
I don't know how many ghostly sounds we'd find, in a real active one.
Oh, I'm sure we'd
moans
get
and
lots of moanings and creaks
Yeah.
and other phantom sounds.
Possibly even chains.
We played that
Yeah,
disclaimer ahead of
chains.
time, so we're good.
Yes, we are.
So bad.
Oh my word.
Well, June, let's kick off our Shady Lady Bordello Museum micro investigative report.
Kick it off? You mean
Yep.
or just kind of say what happened?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I just wanted to check, in case I was supposed to write a report. And
Oh no, I wrote the report.
Jacob is an awesome. You'll have to go check out Ghostly Activities and check out his website with all of his amazing reports that he's written.
And
Just
please
incredible.
drop your link in chat.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Well,
please
here
do.
I'll drop the bordello one in there because you get the videos and you get the image galleries and you get all the gory gadget details.
I'm slowly going through my audio recordings, and but I haven't made enough headway yet. But
Yeah.
it was really, really. It's just such an amazing, cool place, and I don't know. I really enjoy it. And then I got to play a madam.
Yes. What was your madam name?
What was my madam name? Oh, I said when I just called myself Big Bad June. It wasn't
Yeah.
very original, actually.
Well, yeah, but you.
Besides Cherry Poppins, no.
Yeah, well, you were just talking about getting them into shape, making more money. No, you
We're gonna make improvements.
some improvements to the food.
You don't know what you're doing. I will show you how to do it.
Now, where is the Shady Lady?
It is in Centralia, Washington.
Aha, I see.
Yes, it is about an hour and a half from Seattle.
Yep.
Is that about right?
Yep,
40
hour and a
minutes?
half.
Yes, it's a really, really cool place. The whole town is just a really fun, cool place. Of course, the last two times we've been there, they've had car shows, but this last time was not as bad as the one before. That one was pretty loud, and people carried on to like 10 something at night.
No, a little bit later than that. This one still had its moments. I feel.
The problem was there was also a game going on, a Seahawks game,
Mhm.
right? Seahawks?
Yeah.
Seahawks. And the bar that was right behind the Shady Lady was very active with people expressing their, I don't know, sportsmanship.
It would be on EVP. Is anyone here that would like to communicate with us? Seahawks, 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 Seahawks.
Yeah.
It was about like that all night.
Exactly. It was. But we had some interesting things. One of the things I really can't figure out is the footsteps that Tammy and I heard when we were in the other room.
Yeah.
We were sitting there, and all of a sudden we heard loud footsteps coming through the door, and we had assumed it was Jake or Sandy coming in to tell us something. And then all of a sudden, no one was there. Because we're waiting and like, well, are they coming around the corner? And we both kind of got up and looked around the corner, and it's like, okay. And then I thought, well, it must have been somebody coming through the other door. And we just heard, it just sounded like it echoed. So we kind of did our own little, we just tried it out ourselves. And so I sat where I was, and I had Tammy walk from the door into the room. And yeah, it was nothing. Absolutely. It was nothing until they got right into the room with us. We didn't hear anything. So something had to have walked into the room with us in order for us to hear those footsteps. So, and then I tried it with, with Tammy listening, and the same thing. She didn't hear anything until I got into the room, like right before this little rug that we had in there. So that was really interesting. We both heard it. So, and hopefully we got it. I haven't gotten that part yet on my recorder, but hopefully we got that in the recorder.
Yeah. So I think just for the audience that may not do a lot of ghost hunting, when you do EVP analysis or you're playing back and listening to the audio of your recording, a lot of times ghost voices are very weak. They're like whispers, and you have to listen to each session like 4 times to make sure you hear everything. So it's a long, drawn-out process.
Very long.
Yeah.
Yes. But I would rather listen to audio than I would watch the videos.
Oh, I'm totally into the videos, but this is why we work well together. Because I don't want to listen to EVP 4 times.
Yes. Because it's one of those things where it's just like, oh my gosh. If I have to watch this any longer, I'm going to have to stab my eyes. Get some forks.
Yep, and that's why the ghost hunting shows look so interesting. It's that strategic editing.
Yes, exactly. Yep. But audio, for some reason I can stare at the screen, stare at the software that I have. It has the squiggly lines when any, sound is going on, and, I just like to watch it. But, I've gotten some EVPs before where there have been no squiggly lines.
That's very true. I have too. And so it wasn't, the energy source wasn't strong enough to create a wave. And most EVPs I get are like that.
Right. I love how Jacob can translate for me. It's so nice. He knows what I mean.
Oh man, is that mansplaining?
No, it's good mansplaining.
Dude, I would...
Because I can't explain it. No, but it's just such a cool place, and the owner is so amazing. I just absolutely love her to death, but not really to death in case something happens to her. But
Right.
just thought I'd throw that in there. Throw my own disclaimer in. And but yeah, that was pretty cool. What else happened that night besides the REM pod going off?
Well, we were able to debunk that one though.
But are you sure? I mean, complete debunk. Because if that was something that, I don't know,
maybe
if that was something
not
that was going on a lot.
Yeah, well, maybe not the first one. So if you go to my website, I put the link in the chat. It's the second video where you see me reacting to the REM pod going off because I picked up the device and it didn't have microfibers. So what happened that night was on the REM pod, microfibers started to collect around the edges at the top where the EM field comes out. And so if anything crosses that, it'll set off the alerts. So when it started going off a lot, like halfway through the night, I think it was, or the investigation, you could see all these semi-transparent microfibers sticking up and waving around and wiggling, and it would set it off.
But wouldn't that though be set off more than what did happen?
Well, it has to. It has to build up. Like when it was going crazy at the end, it was covered with them all around. Like you could see them in my hand when.
Tammy Lynn was running down to the room. Okay.
One sec. I'm not good at. Let me. We have some folks in the chat I need to direct over to our website because that's where we're doing all the linking and stuff, and I gotta drop the location for them real quick. For me, the big thing that evening was when Sandy and I, it was the first EVP session of the night, and we were in room 3, which the Bordello rooms are in the second floor front of the Shady Lady on Tower Avenue. So you can see the 3 windows for the 3 rooms. And we're doing an EVP, and Sandy was asking questions. Not much was going on. I sit down and I start asking, was the sheriff bad? Did the mayor visit? And we started to get reactions, and I could feel a coolness on my right arm, and it also felt like someone was breathing on me. And then shortly after that, the REM pod went off the first time in the room next door.
Yeah, that's right.
But other than that, I mean, I went through my videos. I didn't get anything.
No ghostly apparition running
No
around.
ghostly apparitions. Like I said, if you read the report, I've got all the gory details room by room, which gadgets and experiments we were running. And a photo gallery. It's only $5 to go to the Shady Lady Bordello Museum, just so you know. It's worth the $5.
It's worth it. Yeah, it really is. Just to see all those artifacts and read up on everything. This was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, okay, and I wanted to, while it was in my head, I wanted to interject. Everybody that is in or around Seattle, Washington, Spooked in Seattle had a very unfortunate flood from a deal upstairs, and they're recouping their losses, and some of the tours have been a little slow lately, and if you're out there and you've always thought about going to the Spooked in Seattle ghost tours, do it. It's awesome. It's well worth. Okay, I don't know how much it is, but it's well worth it, and it'll help. It'll help Ross and June and everybody recoup some of the losses that they incurred.
yeah, it really sucked. It was a water filtration system that burst on the third floor of this building, and it all came into our laboratory with our equipment and books and newspaper clippings of when a ghost first started, the Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle Tacoma, when it first started with all these newspaper clippings back in 2000 and things like that. So it was pretty sad. And a few things were ruined too, so it was just like, oh my gosh. But we will get through it. It's just kind of messy, trying to dry out everything, set everything out, and make sure some of our equipment that was left out, which
Oh, sure.
sadly it was left out,
Mhm.
that it works and it's dried out. So, but thank you, Wendy. Yes, you're wonderful.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, without further ado, should we call our guests in?
I think that'd be a good idea. Let me. There we go. There they are. Okay, adding them to the call.
Awesome.
You're getting play-by-play Skype operations.
Yes.
We need a robotic voice.
Yes.
Please contact guests. How was that? Was that okay?
That was actually pretty good.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks.
Very R2D2.
Yes.
Thank you. I try. I aspire to be an automaton myself. Thank you.
Jake, did you want to start reading the bio, and we can trade back and forth paragraphs if you'd like to? Or...
Let's see. Well, I want to make sure. Okay, I'll take the first two off the. I'll read Kevin, and you want to do Jennifer, so he's up first. And I'm sorry if I mispronounce something because there's an acronym in here I'm not familiar with. But are you ready? Let's do that. Okay. Kevin Malek is a paranormal historian and founder of the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Ltd. He is a ufologist with the UFO Wisconsin Research Team and a former certified field investigator with MUFON. That's the one I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yep, that's right.
He is also a conspiracy analyst for Ultimate Conspiracies and Apocalypse Nation. And over to you, June.
Okay. And Jennifer, and hopefully I'm pronouncing, is it Scelsi-Malek? Scelsi-Malek? I guess it might be. We'll ask her when she comes on. Yes.
Exactly.
Is a psychic and resident demonologist with the NWPS, that's Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Ltd. She is also the Wisconsin representative for PWSM, which is, I'm not sure how to say this, Praesidium Warriors of St. Michael, and a remote viewer with the Project PSI Institute of Chicago, working on missing persons and cold cases. Sounds amazing.
Absolutely. They both run the Northwoods Paranormal Library and Resource Center in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. They are contributing writers for the Supernatural magazine and the Paranormal Chronicles. They are the hosts of the AM/FM terrestrial and internet fringe talk radio show Paraversal Universe on WBHM-DB. But this other one I'm not so sure of. WCET FM and the Rift Radio networks. And without further ado, shall we bring them on?
Yeah.
Cue the applause.
Yay!
Good evening, Kevin and Jen. Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, are
Hey,
you there?
hello.
Hey, Kevin.
Hello.
Hi, Jennifer.
Kevin and Jennifer, we hope.
Yes.
Oh, so glad you guys could be with us today.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
joining.
us.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for having us on.
You betcha. It
I
all
know
worked out well.
Yes, I know the last time you were supposed to be on, you had a horrible thing happen.
Yeah, one of our society members passed away, Reverend Shaman Gwen Pond. And yeah, it was we appreciate you guys letting us take that night off.
Oh, we understand. That would have been really rough.
Yep. Not to mention the fact that there were some technical difficulties that evening as well. So it,
Yeah.
like I said, the timing just all kind of worked out.
Right.
Yeah, and she was quite possibly the oldest active paranormal investigator in the country. She
wow.
passed away at 92 years old.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. She had doctorate in divinity, and she was just with us at a paranormal investigation, an overnight investigation.
That same week.
Yeah, earlier that
Wow.
week. And she did the whole duration. She always had, more energy than people half her age, and yeah, you wouldn't know that there was anything wrong with her.
Oh.
And I guess everyone just kind of figured she'd just keep going,
Yeah. Yeah.
because she was so active, not just with the society, but also with the church, being a retired Methodist reverend. But she was still active with the United Methodist Church. So, who we were in contact with that night, that we postponed the show
Mm-hmm.
because we had a lot of phone calls going back and forth too and stuff on our end. So,
Sure.
Wow.
Well,
then-
I am so sorry for your loss there. That sounds like it was a real loss for a lot of people.
Yeah.
yeah, she was an amazing lady. It really was. And it was an honor to be able to work with her
Mhm.
for probably, I think, 5.5 years that we did. Just an amazing theologian, a very, just very close to God, very holy person, someone you can, ask any question and, you're going to get the right answer, like
Mhm.
what's the right thing to do kind of thing. And yeah, she was a rock within our society and stuff. And so yeah, she's a life member. She'll always be a life member in our society, if you will.
Oh, sure.
But yeah,
Okay.
Sorry.
Very much so. But at the same time, it sounds like she didn't have any long-term illnesses to take her down either, and that's
well, she had
a
full
blessing
life.
in itself.
Yeah,
Pardon?
I mean, she had a full life.
Mhm.
She didn't have any kids. So I guess there wasn't terrible grief, because she did have a full life and she was active right up until the very end.
Right.
They found her in bed. She died in her sleep. So we assume it was just a very peaceful passing.
Mhm.
And But a full life and much accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she worked with Dr. Martin Luther King. She had been all over the world. She'd done missionary work, um,
Wow.
just all kinds of stuff.
Incredible woman.
Yeah, so she won't, and we got we got a book coming out soon. Um, hoping to have it out by Halloween, called Paraversal Universe, and we're gonna have stuff in there about her too. We had to edit a little bit of it because of her passing, but the content is still there.
Nice.
Well, excellent. What will your book cover, other than your friend?
It's called Decade of Diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Cases, experiences, and insights from the NWPS, and it's by Jennifer and myself. So we'll be covering just all those things. There's casework in there, experiences we've had, different insights and wisdom that we've gained from doing this over the last decade, and there's some articles that we've written from Supernatural Magazine and Paranormal Chronicles that are going in there as well.
Oh, very
That
good.
Yeah, so it's we're looking forward to it.
Are you self-publishing that, or did you?
Yes, we are. Actually, my dad is an author as well, and he's done the publishing route where he's had a publisher, and he's done the self-publishing, and he says go self-publishing. He wish he had done so right off the bat. He wouldn't have had the headaches that he had to deal with different publishers. So
I bet. Now, I had read that your dad was, also an author and everything. Did you grow up listening to a lot of his stories and kind of with everything?
well, he writes epic fantasies. So
I
and
saw that.
right, the work we do is nonfiction.
Right,
So
right.
there's a distinction. However, a lot of the work in his epic fantasies comes from folklore and different legends and whatnot. But
Right.
yeah, early on, I think his influences influenced me to, I guess, enjoy reading. Reading like Sword of Shannara and Tolkien and different stuff that he had in his library that I was aware of, that I was exposed to. Now, his books weren't published until well after I was an adult. So then, as far as his stories or the work in his Helm series, it's a trilogy. That's again, but there are different, like I said, there are influences to folklore and legends and those kinds of things. So that's cool.
That is really cool.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Well, why don't I was going to say, if you don't mind, why don't you both tell us a little bit about yourselves and your background, and then kind of tell us how you both met?
Okay, well, I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
Just you read the bio, so that's
Right.
a paranormal historian, a ufologist, running the NWPS, soon to be author, and all that. How we met? We met over Facebook, actually, through the paranormal community. I want to say probably just over 6 years ago, and we had communicated for a few months back and forth, and there were, on my end, there were no red flags with Jennifer. Just in communication and getting to know her, and we at one point we had her remote view a case we were working.
Oh, cool.
And it was the first time we had used a psychic in an investigation in the NWPS, and she nailed she nailed it. She got the number of rooms right. She everything she said correlated with what we were told was going on regarding different events and things that were happening. I'm a skeptical believer. My thing is like, you got to show me. If you're going to make a claim, you got to show me. And so I was impressed that night. I know the team was. And so it wasn't long after that I invited Jennifer to come to Wisconsin and finish the case with us, because the case wasn't wrapped up at that point yet. And she did. She came up, and we've been together ever since.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
So yeah. So now it's since then we got married, and 6 years later, here we are. So, but yeah. So yeah. I would have never guessed that I would. I didn't join Facebook to find
The love of your life. Yeah.
exactly. And I didn't think it would come from across the U.S. She was in Florida with CSI Paranormal at the time, and yeah, so that's how we met. So
sweet, very sweet.
Right. So with me, getting to where I am paranormally speaking, I knew when I was at a very young age, I knew I was different. And I say this because at a very young age, I, just like today, was able and still am able to see, hear, and feel spirits. And when I would have my experiences, they would appear as real as me and you. So when I first started having my encounters, I would literally think that they were physical people until, I started getting older, and thank God I had the support system I did, because anytime I had questions or something made me uncomfortable, if I were scared of something, I had my family there for me.
Oh, that's nice.
There were several women in the family that were gifted, and so that helped me a lot. So that was kind of my introduction into the paranormal.
And Jen, did your family encourage you then, and not do the usual hush hush, you can't tell anybody about this, they'll think you're crazy, the usual spiel a lot of people hear?
Oh no, we talked about it around the house.
Very good.
It's not one of those things that they would label me, tell me not to speak about it. I just chose not to speak in public about it, because I'd realized, from speaking to them, that not everybody in the neighborhood had the same things going on as I did.
Right.
And so that it wouldn't just be something I should be like, hey, I saw a spirit today. What about you?
Yeah. They'd be like, what? Yeah.
So that got me, as I got older, I started researching and watching TV shows and going to libraries and getting my hands on books, anything paranormal that I could possibly get my hands on. As far as, and then when I found Facebook, and this was a while before I met Kevin, I was a member of CSI Paranormal, City Sightings Investigations. A great group of people. I'm still really good friends with the founder, Herc. So I was with them for a good number of years until I met Kevin and got involved with our society up here. But in between that, I used to do, when I was living in South Florida, I used to offer to do medium walks for people or for paranormal teams that had clients that requested them. And during one of my walks was I guess I could say one of the first times well, not the first time, one of many times, I was actually introduced to something demonic.
Uh-oh.
And in this particular case, I had been called locally around my neighborhood to do a walk of a home. Family contacts a team. They're scared. Kids are being affected, experiencing the cold spots, the hot spots, the footsteps, the voices, stuff you hear about all the time, the lights flickering. Back then, I would prefer to do my walks clean. And when I say that, I didn't want any information.
Right.
Because I didn't want my walks tainted. So they got me to this house, and I remember pulling up, and I got out of the car, and it felt like I walked into this big, thick wall of heavy oppressiveness. I had a really bad feeling. I automatically knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it at that time. And so I go in, and the team introduces me to the homeowners, and we're standing there. And before I did my walk, I kept on focusing on one area in the hallway, and that was the closet. And I had asked them, if they were aware of any, if they used any Ouija boards, if they practiced anything occult-like. And of course, they said no. At the same time, I keep getting this nagging feeling to go check the closet. And so I ask, and the homeowner, he opens up the closet, and I'm looking around, and I notice there's a loose floorboard.
Okay.
And at this point, I had asked if they knew what was there, and they said that they didn't. So they reached in, and they pulled out a piece of cloth. Well, they uncovered this piece of cloth, and underneath the piece of cloth was a Ouija board.
Uh-oh.
And I thought at the time, were genuinely shocked. And they told me, they told everybody they didn't know it was there. They never thought to check it, what have you. And so I decided I was going to do my walk. Now, the house I walked had 2 levels. So it had like the bottom floor, and then it had the top floor. I walked the whole entirety of the bottom floor, and I don't feel anything. And I decided I'm going to, and I let them know. But I said I wasn't done because I wanted to walk around the upstairs. So the type of steps they had is when you walk up a handful of stairs, and it's got like one big flat step, and it curves on an angle. And I had gotten up that far, the steps. My hand was on the banister. I completely froze. I was looking up at the foot of the steps. In front of me was a 7-foot tall black mass.
Oh boy.
I had never seen something that intense before. And I was completely frozen to the banister. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't talk. And after what seemed like an eternity, I felt a rush of cold air. And I realized at this point, I felt the cold air because that same mass picked me up from where I was standing and threw me across the room, and I smacked right up against a wall.
Oh my gosh.
I have a scar from it. It's a nice little reminder. My ankle was sprained, but it wasn't bruised. So in this, at this point, the team that was there, they run over and they're helping me up. I look over to, see what the homeowners are doing. The homeowners are laughing.
What?
Laughing. Like laughing. And when this thing was busy picking me up and throwing me, it basically told me I had no right to be there. It was invited.
Oh, wow.
And
Interesting.
they got me to the door, and I looked at these people, and I said, you guys don't need help from paranormal teams. You guys need Jesus. I said, that is some sick stuff to do by baiting people to come in, because that's what they were doing. They were baiting people to come in to see if they could pick up on any activity.
Sure.
So I leave, and a couple of days later, I start noticing black shadows around the house during the day.
Oh no.
I get the same feeling that I'm not alone that I got when I was in that house. It had gotten to the point where it didn't matter if it was day or night. I would get scratched. I would get pinned to furniture. I would get pinned up against furniture. And there were, and I think the time that I finally had it and I couldn't take any activity anymore because I wanted this thing gone. I had called a priest from the local Catholic church and I explained to him what had been going on. And he said he would come out the next day and do a blessing, not the major rite of exorcism, a blessing, in case anybody's wondering. So I get off the phone with them. And the same night before I go to bed, I decide I'm going to take a shower. I'm standing there in the shower, minding my own business. Now, I wear St. Benedict's and St. Michael medals. At this time, I don't take them off. They're part of my DNA. I had them on a ribbon. I'm in mid-shower, and and it's the point where I have my eyes closed, and I heard clinking sounds. I look down, and the medals are off the ribbon on the floor at my feet.
Wow.
When that happened, I felt that same familiar cold rush of air. I was then pinned to the wall by this thing, and I got the snot smacked out of me.
Oh no.
Excuse me. It was so bad that when I got out and I calmed myself down because I was pretty hysterical and fed up, I was kind of a mix at this point, and I told him what happened, and he came over next day and he did a house blessing, and he got rid of it. I didn't have any problems after that. The experience was so much on me that usually when I talk about it, it gives me anxiety. It's to the point where when I go to sleep, I have to have nightlight in the bedroom. If I'm in a room at night, there has to be either a lamp on or a nightlight nearby because I refuse to sleep in the dark. Now, you would think someone like me have that experience, that I would be, running away from it, don't want anything to do with it. No, I decided the opposite. I decided that I wanted to help people because I realized that there were people out there that had it just like me or worse. And so I started my studies on demonology. And God, how many years ago was it when I found Ken?
Ken passed away earlier this year.
Right.
Ken Deal. Franciscan Roman Catholic demonologist.
Yeah, at the
so probably well, you studied under him for 4 years.
Yeah, I studied under him for 4 years, and then before that too. Also, I joined an organization called Praesidium Warriors of St. Michael. And
I'm glad you pronounced that for me because
because I
And that was actually started by Father Bob Bailey. And it was an offshoot for people who were looking to connect with the organization in regards to any diabolical or negative cases up here. Spiritual warfare.
Right.
And to quickly backtrack before I quit hogging the microphone here, with the encounter that I had, I'd come to find out later around the neighborhood that these parents were bragging to some of their neighbors about the stuff that they were doing, to the point where when their kids were born, they had rituals and attached demons to their children. The church, from what I last heard and understood, and child services intervened and got the children taken out of there.
Oh wow.
good, very good.
So,
Yeah.
but and then that's kind of it for the demonology. And then a couple of years ago, I hooked up with Dr. Chuck Kennedy from the Project PSI Institute in Chicago, and we work on through remote viewing, missing persons, and cold cases.
Very, very good. Can I ask what your success rate is? Have you been able to help them solve a lot?
We've solved. Okay, I could tell you as far as cold case murders, we've solved 8 to 9 cold case murders,
Wow.
and we've brought home close to 56 children.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
fantastic!
That's
Fantastic.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a cool setup, what they got going on over there at the Institute. Okay, so Dr. Kennedy is a neuroscientist, and so his research, he was interested in how the brain worked in for psychics and people with abilities. So he was researching this. He would scan out the brain, uh, scan the brains of psychics while they were doing different psychic exercises to see what parts of the brain were firing and being used and whatnot. So he had mapped out like 400 and some psychics, and over the years, he's been doing this since the 60s, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
He's in his 70s now, and so over the years he met some really, really good psychics, and he thought to himself, I wonder if I, you know, bring the psychics together that I've mapped out, the ones that I feel are legitimate and credible, that I've even verified with science, or him, that could we bring home a missing person was his thing. And so he decided, being a man of science, that he needed to set up a way to vet the information he was getting from psychics, because no psychic is 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
Psychics make mistakes. And so how can you deal with that and still set up something that's, based on scientific method? And so he came up with this computer matrix. So today he works with 12 different psychics throughout North America. Jennifer is one of them. And what he does is, for each psychic, the psychics don't talk to each other.
Mm-mm.
Okay, they don't share case information or anything.
We're not even allowed to watch the TV or the news or read the paper.
Oh wow.
And so he gives them a name and a photo and like a picture, like a map.
Yeah, Google Map coordinates.
And they meditate on that and then get back with him and give him the impressions. And then what he does is he takes their impressions and he puts it into the matrix. And after he does this with all the psychics that are working whatever case he's working on, the matrix picks out the commonality points that the psychics picked up on. Anything that was the same that all the psychics mentioned. Or, it could even be more than one psychic for that matter. But, and that's the information that he would use and give to law enforcement, feeling that it's vetted, and that if he's getting multiple psychics that are coming up with the same thing, there must be something to it.
Oh wow.
And so, and that's, like one case where
we could talk about this one.
The psychics had mentioned a red barn on the edge of town, or a red house on the edge of town, and that it was like 5 of the 12 had touched on this. And so he had told the local police department, the guy he was in contact with, about it. And they did. He said, you need to look for any red barn or house or building on the edge of town, because, I got, psychics telling me that this isn't, important to the case. And so they did, and they found one, and they raided it. And not only did they find the missing kid they were looking for, but they found a whole room full of them, and it turned out to be human trafficking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. I mean, I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Well, that's the matrix. That's how it works. That's awesome.
Right.
I love the way he's got it set up. And
Really awesome.
All right. So the way that we work, another way we work through with Doc, is that we don't contact law enforcement. We are protected by Doc. He contacts law enforcement and he deals with the families.
Good.
Because some of the stuff, like Kevin was just saying, when you think you're looking for something, for like one kid, and you come across a red barn, and then you go to the back of the red barn, and there are literally 15 to 16 girls shackled at the ankles together, waiting to be trafficked.
Oh my God. Wow.
That's I
Wow.
just can't even imagine that. You see stuff like that on television, but to
Yeah.
be involved in it and seeing it, that's staggering.
Hmm.
Yeah.
He's got a book that it's the latest book he's written. He's written a whole bunch of them. He's got like 15 books. It's called The Power of Psi, or PSI.
Hmm.
The story behind the project PSI and how it came about. It's really interesting. I think and that's something that he wants to be able to, find different ways to incorporate it on a larger scale, or, you know, have other teams besides his team, do this.
So
Right, just to expand it, understand.
Right. So now his research now is into one of the things he found when he was doing research into psychic mediums was that there's a high percentage with neurological disorders.
Autoimmune disease.
Autoimmune diseases. And so, he still does his research. But the whole, saying, let's see if we could bring home a missing person. And then saying, wow, we actually did that. Let's set up something that we can continue to do that. And then to have it to where you can continue to do that to the point where they've got a whole program down, set up, that's really cool. I think it's cool stuff.
yeah, so guys, now from the chat room, we've got a few questions that the listeners would like to ask you guys, so I'm acting on their behalf here. The first is from, and I hope I pronounced this right, Rody in Houston, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And he is curious about, he has a few questions for you.
Rhodey's a she.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure.
Okay.
R-O-D-Y, I didn't know. Okay. Sorry, Rody. And she would like to know what's your favorite piece of ghost hunting equipment and why.
Ooh, why? There are so many. I would have to say out of physical equipment would be the ghost box, but I would think my overall favorite equipment are my senses.
Fences? What?
My senses.
Oh, senses. Sorry.
My senses. Because 9 out of 10 times when you go to investigations, if there's something there, you're gonna feel it before equipment picks it up.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. The human body is like the best tool we have to detect changes in our environment and whatnot. Favorite equipment. I'm not as big of a fan with the ghost box. I like oh boy. I always have a EMF meter, digital. I like the EVPs, the old-fashioned EVPs, just straight up digital recorder or audio recorder, or analog recorder. Analog audio recorder, or digital analog audio recorder. Either that to me is when you can get an answer, a voice, a message that in a controlled environment that was not said out loud, that goes a long way, so that holds a lot of weight. So for me, it would have to be the digital recorder.
Okay.
I guess.
And a few follow-up questions were, what is your most memorable investigation together and separately?
Well, for me, separately, it would have to be the one I described.
Right.
With my encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how could you forget that?
That's something that kind of takes a piece of you with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Separately, I'd have to say the first thing that came to mind was a night me and an investigator with the NWPS from years ago We spent in an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere that was reportedly haunted, and I was able to get some footage that night on the Hi8 night vision camera, the Sony, that has survived the test of time and is probably some of the best unexplainable stuff I've gotten, that I just cannot explain what it is, and nobody I've showed has got a good explanation either. And just that night, um, I had a bird fly at me inside where I did the whole duck and cover thing as it dive bombed me. I had a mouse that ran all across the floor. I watched this mouse literally run all the way across the floor right up to me and jump right at me for no
Oh
reason.
no!
We get
Mouse
home-
attacks.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get
Oh.
attacked by these animals and stuff, and it was just the house in the middle of nowhere being abandoned and creepy as it was, and the whole, and then of course watching the evidence. It was like a couple days later we watched it, and there's like a 10-second, not even a 10-second clip where something materializes on frame, or materializes, moves, and then dematerializes before it goes off frame. And
Oh, wow.
so I would have to say that. Together, it would have to be what. Well, we've been on so many; it's hard to tell.
Right.
I mean, we got the book that's coming out is filled with different examples. Probably, one of the most information on a case that we wrote about was the case that she remote viewed, that she came up and worked on, and we finished together. Being that was our first case we worked together, being that was that particular case, Shaman Gwen Pond had done a home deliverance. That particular case, our resident psychotherapist had a paranormal experience during the home deliverance. His first paranormal experience in 60 years. He's seen a little black shadow thing run right by him and go right out the front door. The door was open. It was during a home deliverance, and he was there to make sure that there was a cat in the house. He didn't want the cat to get out. And it wasn't the cat that ran by him either. This is,
Right.
but there was enough going on with that case, and we had, that would have to be it.
Right. For me, I think our favorite case that we worked together with our society up here was Summerwind.
Oh, really?
We had
We got a whole
one
chapter.
of our tech people with us, and we had a nerve center set up across from the foundation, and there were a handful of us in the basement area doing an EVP session. And one of the first things that happened was when we had our backs to the foundation, so you couldn't see inside the foundation because the way we were sitting during the EVP session, and during you can audibly hear it. You can hear little rocks hitting the wall where we were sitting. And at some point in the night, Kevin had the night vision camera out, and he was just filming all of us, and we were just doing an EVP session. And he pans his camera around to the archways that you could walk into to go to where the basement used to be, where we were sitting. And from the right side of the hill, a shadow figure appeared, and it stopped in front of us for a few seconds. And after it hovered, it went to the far left. And after a few seconds later, it literally came back the way it went. And the interesting thing was, there was no movement of grass. There were no leaves. There were no twigs snapping when we saw this. And it was at this point Kevin had asked if any of us were smoking. And we're all like, no. And he goes, because I just caught something really cool on the camera. And we have it on the light page. And when you play the footage back, you can actually see it. walk into frame, out of frame, and then back in and out of frame again.
The one that's on the like page shows it as walking down. It
Yeah.
doesn't show it walking back up
Yeah.
the hill. But yeah. So, and the thing was, we had cameras set up everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was filming 3 people standing still. I was standing still, and the last person in their group was all the way at the other end, watching the nerve center, watching the monitors, and had a camera on him too. So everybody was accounted for. Everybody was standing still. I pan over, and I see this black, what I thought was black smoke on the monitor. That's why I said, is anyone smoking? Because we're not supposed to be smoking cigarettes while we're
Right.
doing it.
And that
Yes.
would have been
And-
more white
right.
anyway, right?
Well, it would be white, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a little monitor. It's a night vision. You know, it looked like smoke,
Mm-hmm.
but it looked like black smoke. And you're right, it didn't look like the normal cigarette smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, no. And I said, well, I think I got something really cool on camera. And when we brought it home and we watched it, I realized it wasn't black smoke. It was a shadow, or
Wow.
either a shadow person or a shadow of something that was invisible that had walked down the hill and stopped. And then when I said, was anyone smoking? And everyone said no. And I said, well, I got something on camera. Then it walked back the way it came. And yeah, and Summerwind is like considered Wisconsin's most haunted place, or one of them. It's been on the cover of Time Life magazine. It was one of the first stories picked for A Haunting when that show aired, which has since done I don't know how many seasons.
I think that's where I first saw it.
Yeah.
It's a notable,
years and years ago.
right?
Mhm.
And one of the reports says shadow people, and we got that. We got a shadow person or a shadow of something walking around when everyone was standing still. Like I said, and you watch all the other cameras, and there's nobody walking around. There's no reason for that shadow of somebody walking to be where it was when it was.
So, guys, a couple of questions here from the chat. And first off, from Chris, and I didn't ask where Chris was from. I'm sorry, Chris. He's asking about, do you use scrying?
A scrying mirror.
Yeah, scrying mirror.
Right. We know what scrying is. We don't do it
Okay.
personally, but we know what it is.
Okay.
So.
It looks like he's
And
got
then we
North
wanted to
MO.
say hi to Brody too,
Hey, Rhodey.
out in Texas.
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, we love Brody.
Rhodey's awesome.
Yes, Rhodey's awesome. We've had Rhodey on Paraversal Universe before.
Okay.
Oh, good
Cool.
deal.
The next question I have for you is dealing with Summerwind, because it burned down, I think, in October 2017. So are there any plans to rebuild it, or have you been back to the area since?
It burned down in 1988.
Yes.
Oh, it was
1988.
88?
Yes. it was
Yes.
Oh, I
80.
thought it was more recent.
Yeah, I have an article from the JS Online that's dated from 2017, October 2017.
Huh.
So
Maybe, yeah, that's, no, but Summerwind burned down. Summerwind and the servants' quarters both burned down the same
Okay.
night. And there were 3 theories. One was that it was hit by lightning, and that was the official theory, or the
Mhm.
official reason, which I never bought. I never believed. The second one was that high school kids burned it down one night when they
Mhm.
were partying. The third one was that the town burned it down because they were tired of people going out there and partying all the time and checking it out, because the owners lived in a different state and didn't police the property themselves, so there was nobody out there, to kick trespassers off. So
Mhm.
there's all people there, and the town get tired of it.
Okay. So the article, it's from the Milwaukee Journal, I think, Sentinel, they call it. It was it was a rehash of an article. They updated it from 30 years ago. So
Right.
it tricked us with its date, but it is, you're right, 1988. June 19th, 1988.
Yep. And but yeah, so but now it's somewhere in ruins. And the irony is, By the way, I for the longest time I thought it was high school kids because I was in high school when it burned down,
Oh,
living
mhm.
in the like an hour away from Summerlin, so it wasn't that far. Um, and I had heard about it from kids in high school before I heard about it on the news or from any adults. So I thought high school kids burned it down. But years later, people started coming forward and talking about different things and saying stuff. And then some information came to light. We wrote an article for Supernatural Magazine on it. That article came out like 3 or 4 days later. The Milwaukee Journal Sentinel wrote an article on it. And that was that might have been the article that you cited in 2017. I'm trying to remember if our article was in 2017 or 2018. But either way, yeah. So they wrote a piece too on it because it was speculated that the town actually did perhaps burn it down. People were saying that, and there was some stuff had surfaced about it. So, but be that as it may, it never stopped people from going out there. And that's the irony,
Right. Oh,
is that, and to this day, it's known as the Summerlin Ruins, and it's just as active as it's ever been.
right.
I mean,
Wow.
there was an effort for a while they had the original blueprints, and there was a couple individuals who wanted to raise the money and build Summerwind up, build it back again, and do a bed and breakfast with the original blueprints. But that really never got off the ground.
Right. And just so we let all the listeners out there know, by us talking about this, we're not encouraging any of you that might be local to go out there.
Yeah, it's private property.
It's private property. We have permission to go. And if you go, because there are neighbors on both sides, you could end up in some trouble because the cops do check that place every now and then. More than that, really. And because of the condition of the foundation is also dangerous.
Sure.
So we don't recommend that you just trespass.
So kids, find somewhere else to party.
Yes, exactly.
Now, has anyone done any research into the history of the location, the land, that whole bit?
Oh, sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, it started as a fishing. It was West Bay Lake Fishing Lodge, and that was then sold to Mr. Lamont, right? Who had a federal position, had a lot of money, and he built what was known as the Summerlin Mansion.
Right. And at that time, if I remember correctly, it was called Lilac Hills.
So him and his wife lived there with their servants. The servants had a building to themselves. The servants complained that the place was haunted, and the owners didn't believe it until one night when they were at their table and somebody walked through the basement door or came up from the basement through the door. And when Mr. Lamont saw it, he took his gun out and fired 2 shots or a couple shots at it, and it disappeared. And the bullet holes were in the door all the way until it burned down.
Oh, wow.
So they sold the place to a lady who owned it for decades, who it is written had let the mafia have meetings there. So there were mob meetings there for a while. After that, yeah. After that, then the Hinshaw family comes into the picture, and with them, that's the story that you see on A Haunting. with the guys playing the organ crazy in the middle of the night, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
So that's that time period. And then after that, it went abandoned for about 10 years. And that was the time when it became a rite of passage for every high school kid in northern Wisconsin to go out there and party. And it really still, nothing's changed, still a rite of passage.
And what's really neat about this is, and again, for complete respect to the owners, because they are private people, so not going to use any names here, but she had asked her husband one year for an anniversary present, and he went out and got the deed to Summerwind and came home and basically, happy anniversary, here's the deed to Summerwind.
Well,
Yeah.
it was a nice thought, right?
Right, talk about a unique anniversary present.
Yeah. A deed to what was considered the most haunted house in America at the time, or one of them. Pretty cool. Yeah, and it's a sad tragedy that the place burnt down, because they only owned it for a couple years and then it burnt, and they never had a chance to do anything with it. And go ahead, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, because we have some new questions in the chat, but they're on a different topic, which is UFOs.
Ooh, that's your bag.
So, any parting words on Summerwind before I ask the question from Chris from Northern Missouri?
No, not really.
Okay.
Just Summerwind's interesting place.
Yeah.
Okay. So, with the UFO question, it is: are you familiar with the Carbondale, Pennsylvania fireball into the lake and how the mysterious light lasted for 4 hours? I think it was in 1975.
Are you talking about Shag Harbor?
Is Chris? Can you respond?
Shag Harbor's in the late 60s. This is something different. Okay. I would have to say it would be no.
Okay.
Not offhand.
But we can talk about Wisconsin UFOs now.
We can talk about any UFOs. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not going to know every case out there, but I know a bunch of stuff about ufology.
Right. You know a lot of the bigger, the most well.
I know some stuff. Yeah. I mean.
Well-known places too.
But.
Yeah. So Chris is confirming. No, it was in Carbondale, Pennsylvania. It wasn't the one that you had referenced.
Oh, okay, sure. Sounds interesting, though.
Yeah, let me see what I can dig up and put in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
He says he was there 4 hours after the news radio report, and it had already been surrounded by the military, and nobody could get close.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that.
But I mean, before we talk more about UFOs, it just sounds like you all kind of have your hands in a lot of the different paranormal aspects and ghosts to cryptids and UFOs, and so like, what is your favorite? I guess you'd say your favorite things to research and investigate.
I don't know. See, with me, I don't have a favorite. And I say this because there's so much amazing, awesome, wonderful stuff that you can learn. And if you look at the different categories, everything ties in together in some way or another.
Yeah, when you step back and look at the bigger picture, it all ties in together. I don't have a favorite one either. I like the diversity, actually. I like the unknown and unexplained, I guess.
It's like your children. You love them all separately, but the same.
Right. Right, and the paranormal historian in me encompasses all 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained.
Right.
The ufologist title comes from my certification with MUFON.
How long have you been in MUFON?
I am not with MUFON. Formerly with MUFON.
I'm sorry, formally.
Yes. So, and MUFON, I realized there was a point where nobody in our society had any training with ufology stuff, aside from my love for UFO history, but that wasn't investigation training.
Mhm.
And so I looked into MUFON, and I decided that was something I was interested in. And so they have, of course, got the MUFON Bible, which is this huge, massive book
Mhm.
on ufology. It's got other stuff in there too. It's got some meteorology, some astronomy. It's based on scientific method, also on interviewing people, the witnesses, and collecting information and different resources and all this stuff. And I spent a year studying this massive book, and then you take a test, and if you pass the test and then you pass the background check, then you become a certified field investigator.
Cool.
And yeah, so I did that. And
I guess I never realized that there was so much involved with that. I guess
it's a
thought one day you just wake up and say, I'd like to be a member, and you join. So I didn't realize you did have to be so,
yeah,
going through all that. So it's pretty awesome, actually.
and that information is collected from decades of people in military. You're talking
Right.
all kinds of information from scientists across the board. And ufology now is no longer just a pseudoscience. There are a few colleges around the planet that are offering courses in ufology now. And the basics that they're using is the same information I studied.
Oh.
So when I took the certification, that was the best ufology, I guess, certification or training you can get, was the MUFON course. But since then, it's been acknowledged by academia. First with the college in Turkey, and then with other colleges. Once one college broke the ground and offered it, and other colleges started to. It hasn't taken hold everywhere yet, and it probably won't. Just like parapsychology, it's a select few colleges offer it, and that's it. Most
Right.
colleges don't have anything on that, and that will
Or it's like a continuing education course a lot of times,
But it's important that it's acknowledged, and I'm
Yeah,
glad it's acknowledged. So
too. That's awesome.
right, so we affiliated with MUFON, and as a society, we decided that we would affiliate with them for a year, and then we would reflect upon it and decide from there if we wanted to continue with it or not.
Hmm.
And there were some compatibility issues that had come up that made it difficult for us to work as an affiliate. And in other words, the NWPS has the idea behind the NWPS was to bring the best paranormal minds in the Northwoods into one place to help families. And so for me as an investigator, the other investigators that are part of that collective are a resource to me. When I'm working on a case, I want to be able to use my resources to help whoever I'm investigating for. But when other investigators aren't allowed to participate because they haven't paid MUFON dues, then it becomes a problem. Okay. So, if and I just it was, for me, it was a problem. For everybody else, it was unfair. And so we ultimately decided that we were better just as the NWPS. And yeah, so the training and what I learned from MUFON and we still have the book here. It's always here. I'll always have the information. I'm glad I did it. It gave it. In fact, a lot of that stuff could be used in any paranormal investigation. The structure, the just everything that goes into it. I'm glad for it, and I would do it again.
Nice.
Very good.
Okay. Real quick, we do have jumping subjects, though, for Jennifer. We have a question for you from Rhodey. And she is asking, what are the steps used to determine if a dark or demonic entity is present? And how does someone without abilities make that determination?
That's a good question.
Well, abilities or not, there are stages to demonic activity in a home. And the first one is invitation. And invitation happens when some kind of doorway is opened knowingly or unknowingly, such as someone may be doing black magic, or somebody using a Ouija board out of curiosity just to see if anything would happen. Then you have infestation. Infestation it's kind of like when I talked about earlier in my encounter about seeing the little black shadows. People will start to notice smells like rotting, decaying flesh, or garbage, or fecal matter, or sour milk. They make, the shadows. Then you have oppression. And oppression occurs when the demonic entity has been in the home for some time and will systematically work on breaking down each member of the household one by one. And when they do this, they may make it sound like the particular person that they're working on at that time is crazy because nobody else is experiencing anything. Obsession is when it starts to really, really escalate. And that's when people will start getting physically attacked. They'll have nightmares. They'll see horrifying things. And the attacks will be frequent. Sometimes it can even escalate to sexual stuff happening. Then you have perfect possession. And, you have possession. And possession is basically when you have a person in the home that is the primary target, is speaking languages this person never learned and can possibly never know. Like speaking in tongues or speaking Latin. Levitation is another thing. Levitation can happen with the possessed person. It can actually also happen with furniture. When you're dealing with a possessed person, they'll contort. Their body will bend in ways not normally humanly possible for the average person to even be able to do. And it'll be at that point where, with the demonic, they have one goal, and the ultimate goal is death. And possession is the point where, clergy will need to be called in. You just start looking at for exorcists, demonologists. There is one that I will mention too, that's with possession. There is a such thing as perfect possession. And perfect possession occurs when a person knowingly invites the demonic entity in and lets it take over the person. When you have perfect possession, this person functions just like you and I do. You could be walking down the street past one, hypothetically, and not know it because they dress normal, they eat, they sleep. They do the same stuff that we do to function. And unless it chose to manifest and let you see something from it, you wouldn't know that person's necessarily possessed.
Does
One
the
thing I would
person
say,
themselves know that they're possessed?
Yeah, when you with perfect possession, yes.
Well, yeah, if you're
You're
inviting it.
inviting
I'm
it.
sorry.
I
Yes.
would say any stage of
Right.
possession, the stages Jennifer mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone, when people contact us, we need, you got to collect all the information.
Yeah.
And you got to see where they're at with this, even if it is in the first place. Basic diabolical cases are basically determined on the level of severity a cases. In other words, if we say 10% of all haunting cases are demonic in nature, that means that that's going to be the 10% that is the worst. That's the worst of the worst, which usually has a lot of nasty stuff going on. And then with that, they could be at any stage of the game, and at some point they realize that, and it's usually like an infestation to the oppression. That's when they start realizing that stuff's starting to get nasty and that they
Right.
got an issue. From that point on, from any point on that they recognize there's a problem, it could be dealt with. The worse the problem gets, the more that's got to be done to deal with it. And then, of course, there's aftercare too,
Right.
which is something that you never hear anybody talk about, really. I mean, you hear some people talk about, but not many. But we find that it's really important and relevant to make sure that people don't do things to invite the stuff back in right away, and that they're doing the things to stay strong enough to combat anything should it, rear its ugly head again.
Yeah, because when you get any cases like this, you also want to make sure you need to do a background check. You need to find out if there's been any kind of abuse in the home, whether it be physical abuse, sexual abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Does this person have, or does more than one person in the family have mental illnesses? So when you get cases, they may or may not necessarily be demonic, but those factors come heavily into play because you need to determine.
Yeah, the medical and the psychological's got to be evaluated.
Now, I was just curious, though, being a demonologist, do you assist with exorcisms, or do you can you perform some sort of an exorcism yourself?
Okay, what I do from being with Praesidium Warriors over the years, and then of course mentoring under my mentor, I do home deliverance.
Okay, that's what that was. Okay.
I do home deliverances when needed.
Kind of like Bill Bean does. Have you worked with him?
There's two kinds of exorcism or deliverance, and basically exorcism is just a brand name for deliverance. It's the Roman Catholic brand name for deliverance.
Okay.
And that's a personal deliverance or a property deliverance. Now, so like what Jennifer does is property. Like if we get a case and they feel and we feel that there's demonic elements to it, but it's not escalated to the point of possession,
right, or any of the much harsher stages that we mentioned,
right, then we could come in and Jennifer can do a home deliverance, and I assist with that. And it would be Jennifer and Reverend Tommy and myself, and of course Reverend just passed.
Right. To explain the process of the deliverance, basically would go into a home, talk with the clients. We have everything from holy water. We have blessed incense, frankincense, and myrrh.
The sacraments.
We get blessed metals for the clients as well. When we get there and we set up, I have a binder, kind of. It's like in a binder form, I guess, and it's got a mixture of Catholic and Christian prayers in it. And it's got prayers like, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the St. Michael prayer. This particular home deliverance that I do for the home and property, I'm calling down not only in God and Jesus, but I'm also calling down every saint of spiritual warfare to basically come into the home and remove anything that's there that may be demonic. Before I start, usually I will walk around to the windows, the doorways. I will anoint them with holy oil and holy water. I will spray the corners of each room with holy water as well. And what we like to do is we like to usually have a window or a door open. And so while I'm walking around saying the prayers, Kevin and Tommy, and if the homeowners wish to get in on the deliverance, will burn incense and they'll carry it around. And there are prayers that I say that everybody repeats. And I basically do this in every room of the house. We even go to the extent of putting blessed and exorcised St. Benedict medals over doorways of homes. We hand medals to each of the homeowners, so the family members. If we anoint them, we anoint their foreheads at the end of it. If they have any pets, the pets get anointed too. Nobody's left out. If they want us to expand to the perimeter outside, we will then get sets of medals and bury them on the four corners of the property. This way, what we've pushed out of the house and off the property wouldn't necessarily be able to come back on. So when we do these home deliverances, they're really thorough, and you have to be just that thorough.
Yeah, we burn the frankincense and the myrrh. We use I use a swinging
Censer.
Yeah, and charcoal, like a charcoal brick, and then I put the
The brazier thing.
yeah,
Right?
and and when we're done, I mean, you can see the cloud of the smoke is very thick, because it's a two-part process. It's one of it is, of course, the prayer, right? The spiritual side, and the other part is the physical part, the changing you're changing the vibration in the atmosphere. You're taking a solid and changing it into a gaseous form. When that happens, it releases a higher vibration. When you burn certain medicines or whatever, that are said to increase the vibration, like I said, frankincense and myrrh, sage, sweetgrass, jasmine, nag champa. There are different stuff around the globe that different religions use, and it's basically the same thing. And they're doing scientific tests now, finding that smudging actually does have beneficial properties to the environmental.
Right.
So, it's that two-part process, and we go in and do that.
Right, and then of course there's aftercare. We talked to them about keeping that plug-in, that connection to God, not talking about the activity, not doing anything to possibly bring up activity again. We give them prayers that they can use.
Yeah, the manual Jennifer uses is the Warriors manual, and that was given to her too by Bob Bailey, Father Bob Bailey. And that's got, like she said, it's got all the different prayers, and then it's got, there are parts where the homeowners got to say the prayers too.
To take back their home and their property.
Yeah, and we have not luck, I should say. We have success with it. Good luck. We have, it's definitely something that we can offer, that the whole thing's, it works. There's something to it.
Oh, that's awesome. It sounds like it's very thorough.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it if it didn't. I mean, it is. It's a very thorough. It's not something where we're doing it and the TV is on and they have people.
Right.
I mean, it's done in the daytime.
Yeah.
Anybody and we can't always do it with Shami. I mean,
No.
the Reverend couldn't always be with us, and he can only to do. So me and Jennifer would do it, or we'd have an investigator or two with us
Yeah.
that are, that are understanding of everything involved and what's going on, and have their own connection, their own faith, which is strong. So,
Now, Rhodey was asking if I knew exactly what the charcoal was for, and I in my head it's because of the smoke that it produces that helps carry all the negativity
well,
and bad stuff out, but I wasn't sure about that.
yeah, the charcoal is, you could buy them. They come in little round,
They're little
Pellets, aren't they,
charcoal
or-
discs.
charcoal, yeah, little charcoal discs, and I use just like a burner to, you could use a lighter or whatever, but they're made to light. So like you apply fire to them and they sparkle a little, or
Right.
and they're like quick lighting, and they
Okay.
burn for about like 20 minutes. You could buy them for like hookahs and stuff.
Right.
Actually, people buy them for like
All kinds of
like
stuff.
hash and stuff.
Yeah.
But we use them for smudging, because once that round thing is going, you could put the frankincense resin or the myrrh
Or both.
or both, or whatever you're using, you could put on top of it, and that burns it, and that
Right.
is turning whatever to smoke, a real thick smoke, and that goes
Mhm.
throughout everywhere.
Mhm.
So you just walk around and hit the corners of the room and the closets and any and everywhere that you can get to, and work your way towards that eventual door. Like we'll start in the basement, work our way up to the main level, go upstairs, work our way down to the main level, and then the main level we work our way to the door to push it all out.
Mhm.
And you're going along, and different prayers are said at different intervals, and different things are done, and uh, so
Now, do you find it's better to have the homeowners involved in that process? Does it do a little more thorough cleansing job to have their energy and have them kind of take control of their home again, or does it really matter that much?
well, like they're like, they have to be involved in the whole
Yes.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a spiritual battle
Yeah.
on their turf. So I mean, it's they got to be involved as far as like actually involved in the process. Yes, they walk around.
Right. They'll say the prayers.
They'll say that prayers and amen and all that. And,
Yeah, we do make sure when we do these deliverances that if there are any families that we've dealt with that have kids, that the kids are not particularly present when we do this.
Sure. That's
Right.
just smart.
But yeah, I mean, it's because who else? And we don't know anybody else in our area that will go into a situation that may be like that and try to deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that nobody else will, but we just don't have. There's not a lot to choose from up here.
Sure.
Right.
You're kind of the go-to.
Right. To answer your question earlier, yeah, we know who Bill Bean is. We're very familiar with him.
Oh,
I haven't worked with him, but I only work for the state of Wisconsin. I mean, I do have a like page on Facebook where people can reach me, and I have gotten requests to give people help and advice on Facebook from like here in America and different parts of the world. But when I do the deliverances for homes, it's usually within the state of Wisconsin.
Very nice. Well, we had just before I switched the station up some. My other co-host had he was close friends with Bill Bean, and we had him on a lot, and that's why I was just curious.
Yeah, he's
a great fellow.
And his we're non-denominational,
Yeah.
and that we don't have just one denomination.
No, we're here to help everybody.
Yeah. So it's and I like that aspect about Bill Bean too.
Yeah.
He doesn't get stuck on the whole denomination thing.
He doesn't even care if you're pagan as long as you believe something.
So
yeah,
he's helped a lot of people.
Yes. It
So
sounds
you
like
guys,
you have too, though. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
that's right. You have.
Mhm.
That's incredible. But no, I was just curious. Have you guys been on a case that like really, really scared you, and basically you said you're never going back to that place, or anything like that?
Or did you take it as a challenge?
Yeah.
Never that we were never going back to it. We, yeah, there was, for example, there was one time we were doing a home deliverance, and it's a long story. It's in the book. We went into it was for a couple, an older couple. We had done investigating, and they wanted us to come in and do what we could for the environment to weed out or to get rid of the evil and the negative stuff that they were feeling. And after looking into the case, investigating it, we felt that the home deliverance was warranted. So on the day when it was supposed to happen, it was the couple, the man and the wife, and then their son, who lived there part time. He was like 20, early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and anyway, so for the day of the deliverance, we get there, and it's them, and their son was there, and he showed up, and he wanted to be there for support. And up until this point, he wasn't really a factor in the whole thing, and that other than we were aware that he would stay there part time, and not even half the time. And we had talked with him and stuff, and he shared his experiences with us. But anyways, yeah, so he was there, and as we started going along with this, he started acting different. To make a long story short, it got so bad that we had to stop what we were doing and leave because he had threatened to strangle Jennifer. She didn't immediately stop.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It became apparent that he had an attachment. Because as we were starting this, like I said, it's. I guess when the book comes out, you have to read the book to find out.
Okay.
That's
But,
a good plug. That's a
yeah.
good plug for it. Yes. Very nice.
But in that's the only time we've ever had to stop before we finished in the 10 years.
For your own safety.
Yeah, for everybody's safety. I mean, the
Yeah.
parents realized that everybody realized, I guess kind of at the same time what was going on is that as we're doing the religious stuff, with the holy water and the prayers and it brought out something in him that nobody was aware was even there. And you could see it in his physiology and the shaking and the look on the face and the craziness and the whole then he had there was a point where he locked himself in a room for a while. We couldn't get in there, and of course you got to do the whole building, and
You only had one room left to do.
yeah, it was but yeah, we had to end it because otherwise I couldn't guarantee everyone's safety if we didn't. And
Safety first.
that's kind of, the parents they didn't realize their son had an attachment, or that he was whatever this thing was the thing that we were called in for. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something wrong here in our environment, in our house, and and it turned out to be that he had a demonic attachment.
Wow.
But yeah, so stuff can go. I mean, you go into you get called into a case, and you never know what to expect.
Right.
You never tell what's going to happen. What events may take place that may, leave you in really precarious situations.
Right.
Where, and yeah, at that point, we were there to do a home deliverance. We weren't there to do a personal deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
And considering the threats of violence and just the fact that just everything about it was, we just had to stop and then assess the situation and then proceed, but not there at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so stuff does, I mean, stuff happens, you know.
Right.
I've
Well-
heard all sorts of stories from, we've interviewed like hundreds of people over the Paraversal Universes. We're finishing up our 5th year here in the next couple of months. On the end of December will be the end of our 5th season.
Oh, wow.
And
that's
yeah,
on Fridays at 4 Central. Is that correct?
that is correct. Friday,
thought it was.
5,
Mhm.
Friday at 4 Central.
Mhm.
On WBHM, digital broadcasting. And then the replays are Monday and Tuesday on WCET FM and every Thursday night on the Rift Radio Network.
Excellent. Rhodey has to get going, but she wanted to say how much she enjoyed listening to you guys tonight, and thank you for getting to her questions and everything.
Well, thank you, Rhodey.
Yes, we love you. Thank you for asking your questions. Thank you to everybody that had questions for us.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening and chatting and putting those questions in there. It always makes it much more interesting.
Yes, definitely.
Well,
Nice.
I was curious how you guys got into the lake monstrosities. Is that just another branch of interests for you?
The cryptids and
Yes, it's interesting. So again, I have to say 5, almost 6 years ago, we were during a society meeting. We brought up that there were no groups on Facebook for lake monsters. Couldn't believe it. Like, are you kidding me? Nobody at all? You know, that's wrong. Like, we got
right.
to
I
do
love
something.
lake monsters.
So we happen to have 4 members out of 20 members of our society that are also professional fishing guides.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now,
Right. I don't know how that works, but that's just, we ended up with 4. So it's like, okay, we have people with aquatic interest, and one of them is Jeff Stens, who's the crappie king. I mean, the guy's a fishing legend, and he suggested, well, yeah, let's do something about this. And it's like, you know, can we do a lake monster page and do it respectfully? And it's like, well, yeah, we think we can, because Jeff's got the water, he's got the you know, physically out there all the time, and he knows, he's got the river monster stuff covered. We got the folklore and the lake monster, you know, the champ and the Nessie and the Ogopogo covered.
Right.
And we, you know, the ghost ships, we can cover that. USOs, I got that covered with the ufology. So let's do it. And we started the page, and right after we started it, we met Lawrence DeMisa, who does the banners for Paraversal Universe.
Nice.
And we met Scott Martis, who is the founder of the Zombie Plesiosaur Society, who also started a lake monster group the same month we did for the same reasons. Scott was if you watch Monster Quest and you watch the Champ episode, that's Scott. He's the guy.
Wow. I did see that.
Very neat.
Yeah. And so we met a bunch of cool people right off the bat, and now it's the largest aquatic. There are since we started Lake Monstrosities, other people have started Lake Monster groups too, but Lake Monstrosities really, because we cover all aquatic mysteries and wonders of all kinds. We don't just, like with the Zombie Plesiosaur Society, they're just scientific, strictly scientific, zoology, cryptozoology. we'll cover the ghost stuff too, and we'll cover the UFO stuff too, and the Bermuda Triangle and Atlantis and anything, you know,
Water related.
aquatic related. So yeah, it's the largest one on Facebook now, and it's awesome. We have awesome admins, Steve Carrington from Anomalous Universe, and like I said, Scott Mardis, and of course, you know, Jennifer and myself and Jeff Stens and Ty Ward and a few others.
Very nice. Well, June's been to Loch Ness, and that's one of her favorite places.
Yes, I do have to say that when I got there to I think it's pronounced Urecourt Castle, the ruins there, that I kind of stood out there and just kind of scanned the lake for a really long time, hoping to see a little head pop up, but sadly I didn't. I was like so excited. Like,
now, June, what would you have actually done if that had happened?
Well, I probably would have kicked myself because I didn't have my camera ready or my phone ready. But
Right.
I would have probably just squeaked, with joy. And tried to get everybody to look too, because then they'd just think I was crazy.
True.
But
Yeah.
you should see all the Nessie jewelry that I bought. It's really sad. But I love it.
Yeah, the lake monsters are cool.
Lake monsters are awesome.
They are, and we like the cryptozoology too. We do the paracryptozoology stuff. One of our members is Iroquois shaman and cryptozoologist Don Young.
He's also been on Monster Quest.
Very cool. Not
Yeah.
remember the name.
And he, what's nice about Don is of course, he's a cryptozoologist, but he's, as an Iroquois shaman, he's also got the spiritual side.
Mm-hmm.
And within cryptozoology, there's basically two camps. You got your contemporary cryptozoology, which is just basically an extension of zoology. Nothing paranormal at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you got the other side, which is the paracryptozoology, the belief that some cryptids may have powers or abilities that humans simply don't possess.
Much like Dogman.
Yeah,
Mhm.
or like with Bigfoot and the Ultra, or the Mind Speak, or the extremely low frequency, or there's portals and invisibility and
Okay,
I mean, there's enough going on that
I mean, we have both Bigfoot and Dogman up here, so
That's true. That's true.
so we'll go out and we'll not only try the crypto stuff, but we'll try the parapsychology stuff and the metaphysical stuff and the ufology stuff, and
It's just a mishmash of it all.
yeah. Don owns a wildlife preserve,
Oh,
and it's
neat.
got a huge bog. He shows it and he talks about it in the Monster Quest episodes, and so he'll take people out in groups, for weekends at different months, to do Bigfoot expeditions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
right. This wildlife preserve is hundreds of acres, and it's butt up against
The National Forest.
Is this Shaquamagon?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is huge.
Mhm.
And so it's just tons of acreage with no people. And there's over the years there have been reports out there, so it's one of the places we go. And like I said, we go out there and we try not just the stuff you'll see on Finding Bigfoot, but we're trying all kinds of stuff. Anything, but we won't do rituals. Like, we won't do the occult. We're not trying to summon anything.
Oh, sure.
But,
Mhm.
we do draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no trans channeling.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things that we've just decided that we're not going to incorporate. But there's so much we could try that other people just are not trying. And so we go out there and we try it, and we document it.
Wow, that's really great.
That's cool.
It's just so awesome to have you guys on our show tonight.
Yeah,
It's
because
been really interesting.
I've got to be the bad guy and police us for
Yeah.
our time allotment.
That's
It's been an
okay.
honor to come on.
Yeah.
Thanks
it's been
very
an honor.
much.
Thank you guys so much for having us on. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Mhm.
Oh, sure. It was a great show. Thank
It
you.
was,
Great
yeah.
guest.
And we can
Fantastic.
have you back on to talk more about the cryptozoology.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so June, do you have any parting words for this evening?
Well, I'm just really thankful we had so many wonderful people listening and everything for our amazing guests. And well, why don't you guys hurry and let us know where people can find you when they want to if they want to contact you.
You can find me at Jennifer Malek, Psychic Demonologist, my Facebook like page.
Okay, we've got that one in the chat.
Okay.
And the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Ltd. like page.
Okay.
Nice.
Paraversal Universe Radio.
Yep, has 3 like pages. And of course, there's Ultimate Conspiracies. There's like Monstrosities.
Oh,
There's so many of them.
That's great.
But yeah,
We will put those in chat too.
Yeah, and it's also on the Mystic Moon Cafe website for this interview tonight. If you go there at the bottom, we have I think we've got like 8 links with you guys.
All
Just
right,
I've got it.
Yes,
1,
thank
2,
you.
yeah, about 8.
sweet, sweet. Thank you guys. That's awesome.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys, too, and have a good evening.
And Wendy,
too.
Yes.
do you have any parting words for this evening?
Yes. Join me Sunday. Sorry.
Oh, yes,
I had to
Sunday, yes.
I gathered my thoughts. Join me Sunday night as I will be kicking off Wendy Lady's magical studies. And I think the first one I'm going to start out with moon magic. And we'll just kind of go from there. If anybody's interested, please stop on by. I'll have chat going and some other fun stuff, and it
sounds
should just
great.
be an hour long. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Tune
Cool.
And you will have that on the Mystic Moon Cafe website as well as through the Facebook page, correct?
Yes, yeah, it's already on there.
Okay, perfect. And then on our side, I have to thank Carly, our sponsor of Crimson Cloak Radio Network, for
Thank
letting
you.
us invade her space and do this show. Thank you very much, Carly. If you're still listening, she was on earlier.
Right? Yeah.
And then for this evening's outro, we have Adam Jensen's The Mystic. So with that, I will bid everyone a good night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to the chat participants for the great questions. And we'll be back on in a week.
Yeah. Good night.
Have a great
everyone.
weekend.
Take care.
Bye.
Hi.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
In a heart that isn't here, in a room full of lighters, all my demons reappear. Broken cigarettes and bullet holes, one more to the chest and I'm alone. Nothing gets me any higher, and nothing ever will. Tried to stay sober, tried to stay clean. Whack me when it's over, like a bad dream. Mama doesn't call, sister never writes. Bet you they would laugh if I called to say goodbye. No one's gonna worry and notice when I'm gone. No, they won't know I'm missing till they pull me out the mystic. I bet nobody can remember what color eyes are on my face. I'm a freak, I'm a pretender. I never really had a place. Broken cigarettes and bullet holes. One more to the chest till I'm alone. Nothing gets me any higher, and nothing ever will. Tried to stay sober, until they pull me out the mystic. Tell the preacher not to pray. There's no angels where I go. Only pieces that are broken, scattered dreams across the floor. I'm home. Tried to